The Northwest Territories Medical Association regarding Bill 40, an act to amend the Medical Profession Act, which is available on the Legislative Assembly website. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Breen for joining us here today. Bill 40 received second reading and was referred to the Standing Committee for review on November 26, 2021. This bill amends the Medical Professions Act to allow for regulation of physicians to provide virtual care to NWT residents. Bill 40 proposed to make the following changes to the Act. Adds an exemption from getting an NWT license for physicians in other provinces and territories, providing virtual care to NWT residents when there is a referral from an NWT doctor or nurse practitioner. Clarifies a regulation-making power to adapt and adopt standards of practice for the practice of medicine. Allows the Minister of Health and Social Services to make an agreement with an organization or government about physician licensing. Creates a new category of registration and licensing for physicians practicing by virtual care without a referral, and allows registers of physicians to be posted online. In December 2021, committee distributed stakeholder letters seeking input from the public and stakeholders on the changes proposed in Bill 40. Committee received feedback from various stakeholders, including the Northwest Territories Medical Association, raising various concerns with Bill 40. Committee thanks everybody who took the time to provide us with their views and concerns. Some of those stakeholders raised concerns with certain aspects of the bill, as well as certain issues that are not within the scope of this bill. Near the end of the committee's review period, the Government of the Northwest Territories Department of Health and Social Services identified issues with the bill that could require substantial amendments. These issues address some of the points of contention identified by stakeholders. On March 28, 2022, committee sought and received an extension of our review period and indicated that we are willing to work collaboratively with the Minister of Health and Social Services to make improvements to the bill. When a bill is before Standing Committee, it is unusual for the Government of the Northwest Territories to be heavily involved in consultation with stakeholders. However, in this instance, committee took the unusual step of requesting that the Minister of Health and Social Services again consult with key stakeholders on the bill during this extension. Committee understands that the Department of Health and Social Services has met with key stakeholders, including the Northwest Territories Medical Association, and we thank the Minister for this effort. Today, we are pleased to also be meeting with the Northwest Territories Medical Association to hear any remaining concerns that they may have with Bill 40. Dr. Breen, I would like to turn the floor over to you to make any opening remarks that you may have. And when you are done, I will open the floor for any committee members who wish to ask questions about the association's concerns with Bill 40. So with that, I'd love for you to take the opportunity to introduce yourself to the public and proceed with any opening remarks you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I am honored today to be able to present to the committee and provide feedback on Bill 40, an act to amend the Medical Profession Act. And I'm here speaking on my own behalf and on behalf of the Northwest Territories Medical Association, which represents the permanent staff, the medical staff, the physicians of the Northwest Territories. And I hope that before getting down to the issues addressed by Bill 40, the committee will allow me to introduce myself and let you know how I came to be presenting to you today. I live here in Yellowknife on Latham Island on Chief Dragies territory. I live with my family, my husband Eric, and my two children, my son Peregrine, who's about to turn 4, and my daughter Ada, who's about to turn 2. And I work as an emergency physician at the Stanton Territorial Hospital. And I work full-time, which means that I work all hours of the day, 365 days a year. And I've been doing that job since 2014, when I moved to Yellowknife from Iqaluit. Prior to my work as an emergency physician, I worked as a full-scope family physician, so doing emergency room shifts, as well as family practice clinic and obstetrics, doing shifts on labor and delivery. And I was born in New Brunswick. I grew up in the village of Gagetown. My parents and grandparents are also from New Brunswick, and many of them worked as school teachers. I never planned or intended on becoming a doctor. I used to faint at the sight of blood. In undergrad, I studied political science and human rights. I then went to work in East Africa, and it was there that I became interested in the practice of medicine. I went on to study medicine at McMaster University, where I graduated, and then went on to study postgraduate family medicine at Dalhousie University. And I began my practice of medicine at the Kikitani General Hospital in Iqaluit, where I worked for 5 years. I also did some locum work throughout Canada in emergency departments and from time to time back in New Brunswick. And I truly love the work that I do as an emergency physician. It is a joy to work in the Northwest Territories and have the opportunity to work with such a diverse range of people, working with Indigenous patients from throughout the territory, as well as the Kitikmeot region of Nunavut, is a distinct privilege, and is a big part of the reason that I continue to work here in Yellowknife. The work that we do in the emergency department changes every day. The patients change, the team of providers changes. No 2 days are the same, and that's it makes the job interesting and enjoyable, but also very challenging. And the work that we do is extremely complex. And I mean complex in the sense that I've trained a long time to study medicine to do this job, but there are many complexities that I've had to learn on the job that weren't covered in medical school. And when it comes to working in the North, there are many, many lessons that happen on the job, particularly when it comes to the unique aspects of remote medicine, transporting patients from vast geographic distances, dealing with undifferentiated illness, and working with non-physician practitioners who are working in expanded scopes is definitely a unique area of the medical practice that not many physicians in Canada get to experience. The complexity of the job, and within that complex system that we've trained to do, and I've been doing over the past 12 years, I think is very important to remember when we're thinking about some of the changes to Bill 40. And looking at those amendments to the Medical Profession Act proposed by Bill 40 addresses two key areas. So the virtual care, as well as the regulation of medical practice. So I'll just begin by discussing those two areas, and let me begin with virtual care. The Northwest Territories Medical Association wants to congratulate all those who are involved in this bill by prioritizing virtual care and recognizing that this is an area where we need to move forward and modernize our system. And the Northwest Territories is uniquely poised to be a leader in virtual care. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is the need. So I think due to our geography, our unique population, we need to be innovative in delivering virtual care. And then the other two key components are our ability to work within a territory-wide EMR is extremely important. So delivering virtual care within the territory-wide EMR provides us a unique opportunity, and it is very advantageous. So taking advantage of that, I think, is key. And the other unique component is our territory-wide medical staff. So the fact that our full-time, our regular physicians are all employees of the NTHSSA definitely allows us to be very coordinated in the way that we provide virtual care within the territory and outside of the territory as well. So again, thank you to all who prioritize this issue. And in particular, the aspects of the Act that would allow for referrals to take place to physicians outside the territory who do not have a license to practice is an essential part of the bill, and something that we certainly would like to see continue. So that was born out of the crisis of the pandemic, that we started to allow these types of referrals, and we certainly wish for that to continue. Some of the other areas within the bill regarding virtual care, and particularly the creation of the virtual care registry, are felt to be unnecessary. So currently the virtual care that happens, physicians who are practicing outside the territory providing virtual care to NWT residents within the territory, all those physicians currently are licensed. And the NWTMA cannot see a reason that practice shouldn't continue as it is. So the licensing of physicians to provide for virtual care, we think can be the same as licensing for physicians who are licensed to work within the territory. And that really recognizes the need for culturally safe and competent care, a knowledge of the local resources and referral pathways that are unique to the Northwest Territories. And we fear that the creation of the virtual care registry could allow for physicians who are not knowledgeable about the unique aspects of NWT practice to be licensed. So I believe in our consultation with the minister and deputy minister and staff that there is some consensus on this particular aspect, and that there was agreement that the virtual care registry was not necessary and could open up for problematic practice. The other aspects of the virtual care, I believe, and the committee has received the submission from the Territorial Practitioner Executive Committee that does go through many of these concerns. So I won't rehash all those issues brought up by them, but those are the aspects of the virtual care that I wanted to mention. The other aspect of the bill regarding physician regulation has brought up many concerns for NWTMA members, and this is it's a relatively subtle issue and one that's very unique to medical practice, but it has to do with physician self-regulation and autonomy. So the current Medical Profession Act in Section 94, it allows the commissioner, on the recommendation of the minister, to make regulations respecting standards of medical practice. And the proposed amendment expands this to include establishing or adopting standards of practice, codes of ethics, continuing competency programs, and the nature of these programs, and the scope and practice framework and guidelines. The NWTMA supports the adoption of standards, codes of ethics, and continuing education standards, but we believe that this function is best performed by a body at arm's length from the government, and we propose an alternative approach with the same objectives. Already, the ministry has done work in developing these standards and have adapted the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta and their practice standards to the NWT context, and those have been shared with physicians. And that step alone has created a great deal of concern and controversy among the medical staff. Already, NWT physicians are in a unique position, being employees and being governed by the government's code of conduct, which at times can put us in conflict with our other codes of ethics, like the CMA code of ethics, like even the Hippocratic Oath or the Yale Physician's Oath that all physicians have taken. And by putting us into potential further conflict by having the minister, obviously generally a non-physician and non-expert in medical practice, to be actually selecting and establishing or adopting these standards of practice is a cause for concern. And I think, again, this may seem like a very simple functional work that the minister must do in order to facilitate the adoption of these standards. Again, it still is something that's very controversial for physicians and cause for concern. And again, it has to do with the fact that professional autonomy and self-regulation is at the very heart of medical practice, and the ability to practice according to one's own judgment is really essential. And I think that any threat or any possibility that there would be a non-physician regulating that practice or weighing in or making complaints based on standards that are set by non-physicians is at the heart of that concern. So again, while we think that it is essential that standards of practice exist and allow for the complaints process to go forward, we do request that an alternative method, so either contracting this regulation out to a body such as the CPSA, changing the way that that physicians are even licensed by going through the CPSA has been suggested, but certainly something alternative to the minister herself being the one to make these standards of practice would be our request. We do certainly appreciate that Minister Green reached out to the NWTMA, and we had the opportunity to meet with the Deputy Minister and staff from the department as well, and we felt that that was very, very fulsome, and we hope that that high level collaboration can continue in the future. Certainly when it comes to developing future legislation around virtual care, this is an area where it will be essential for physicians who are actually doing this work to participate in the development of that type of legislation going forward. So we are, despite our concerns with the bill itself, pleased with the way that it's being reviewed at this stage. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Breen, and thank you for joining us here today. I know your schedule is very busy, and so us being able to steal you away from the hospital for a bit is very much appreciated, and we recognize the value of that. I wanted to start off by turning the floor over to members for any questions or comments. Emily Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. I was hoping you could just help me understand a little better how, my understanding is that Alberta, the medical profession would be completely self-regulating, and there would be a college of physicians that sorts that out. And can you just help me understand how that works down south, and then the limitations in that being the solution here in the NWT is to, essentially create the body that makes it completely self-regulating. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Emily Johnson. Dr. Breen.
In all provinces, including Alberta, the government establishes an arm's length body. And in Alberta, the example is the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta. And then that body, which is composed of a board of physicians that are elected by the profession as well as members of the public, that is the board that would establish the standards. And in doing so, they would, collaborate with the physicians at large and within the province. Within the Northwest Territories, the concern is that we do not have the resources to have such a body that would be freestanding. What we do currently with regard to the complaint process is contract out complaints to an officer within the CPSA in Alberta. And we're hopeful that something similar with regard to the application of standards could be done similarly.
Thank you, Dr. Breen. Emily Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. And then perhaps, that to me seems like the solution here too is to try and sort out something with Alberta. But can you also help me understand, when the NTHSA adopted these standards and codes of ethics, how different are they from, another jurisdiction? Can we simply, kind of just agree to be regulated the same way as Alberta, or is there necessarily work that has to be done by policy people to kind of tweak it for the northern context? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Emily Johnson. Dr. Breen.
Yes, there are the current proposed standards are very similar to the practice standards in Alberta, but have been modified because some of those standards refer to Alberta-specific legislation. So in general, they're very similar. There would be some aspects of the care that is unique to the Northwest Territories. One example with regard to the Alberta standards is around boundaries and relationships. And it is interesting to see because there are areas of Alberta that would be similar to the Northwest Territories in terms of their geography and living in a small town. But there are some aspects around how a physician governs themselves in terms of their personal relationships that might be uniquely challenging in a place like Inuvik, where there are a small number of people. We want physicians to be integrated into the community and be able to take part culturally and socially. That might be limited by applying the standards word for word from the Alberta context. That's one example that's come to my attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Breen. Emily Knockleby.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Breen, for your presentation. My question actually was asked and answered if we needed to change maybe the nature of the relationship with the GNWT and the doctors being employees. And I guess I just want to make a little bit of comment is that in listening to you speak, it's very similar to me as an engineer in the way that our profession operates and the fact of lack of capacity. We can't do our examinations of experience in the Northwest Territories, so we do partner up with Alberta often for our self-regulating and how we deal, but it ends up creating huge amounts actually of backlog and such, and getting NWT residents, approved for their professional status. So I guess my question is, maybe it's a little bit different than what MLA Johnson asked, but do we need to change it, but then have it sort of fall more under Alberta, like some sort of a hybrid system, or do you see it continuing on as it is? Because you mentioned earlier, Dr. Breen mentioned earlier that there was, the unique aspect of being employees actually could make this be a lot more nimble and quick. So I guess some comments around that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily Knockleby. Dr. Breen.
Yes, thank you. That it raises a very good point, which is that there are multiple layers of regulation when it comes to medical practice, and already physicians in the Northwest Territories are governed by the NTHSSA bylaws, which is one avenue for quality to be ensured, or for if a complaint is made, we can use the bylaws in order to adjudicate that complaint. At the college level, so this would be with regard to actual physician licensing, the concern at this stage is not with regard to the standards themselves, but it is the idea that the minister would have the authority to adopt the standards that he or she sees fit, and that is too close for comfort for physicians, given that there may be competing interests, that the priorities of the minister of the day may not always be in line with the priorities of treating physicians when it comes to individual patients, and even with regard to patients on a population basis, because it isn't always just the patient in front of me as the treating physician that I'm considering, but of course it is the well-being of the system and the resources that I have to govern. So there are, as I've mentioned, many complexities when it comes to the provision of medical care and the adherence to these types of standards. So it isn't so much which standard that we're approving or looking to have approved, but the fact that it would be the minister who actually has that authority to adopt individual standards. Certainly the physician, the NWTMA have expressed serious concern with that. There are concerns, of course, of having the CPSA regulate physicians if we are not actually members of the CPSA, but it was felt that that was a favorable alternative still to having our own minister regulate in the proposed way.
Thank you very much. Emily Knockleby, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you for that. And I can definitely understand that sort of dilemma, because I felt the same way moving into a political realm, but yet having taken oaths on public safety and such as an engineer, and ethics as well. So for me, it was conflicting to be in the political realm, but have that piece. So I completely do understand, and I guess I have more of a comment, is that I would support removing the minister's piece from this. And is there a way that could be done but still move forward with all of this work, or does it kind of kill all of this? I guess I'm not as knowledgeable on how that all works, so that would be my question, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily Knockleby. Dr. Breen?
I'm not able to say what work would be required at the department level to allow physicians in the NWT to be governed by the regulations of the CPSA, but given that we do have contracts in place that allow for the complaint process to be adjudicated through that body, we're hopeful that something similar for standards of practice could be adopted.
Thank you, Dr. Breen. Members, does anybody have any additional questions? Emily Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. I guess there's a lot of questions that the department needs to answer here. We as committee, have the ability to completely remove things or make amendments that the department agrees to. And I think one of the problems we're facing is that regulatory power has existed prior to the minister and as you note, exists already. They've adopted code. So by just removing it, we're not solving anything. The minister has no authority, and we've ceased the ability to regulate at all. So we need the department to agree to some sort of, way to regulate, but whether that can be done in the very short window we have to report this bill back is some of the logistical kind of procedural knots we've tied ourselves in. But my question is I think the last conversation with the minister was one of essentially nothing shall be adopted without consultation with the NWTMA. And perhaps some back and forth about whether the NWTMA actually just has to agree to it before it can be enforced. But can you perhaps help me understand exactly what the NWTMA is and how it's distinct from a college of physicians? Like, is it inappropriate for us to say, well, why don't you guys just tell us what the regulations are, and then the minister will adopt them after the NWTMA has agreed? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Emily Johnson. Dr. Breen.
Thank you. Yes, the Northwest Territories Medical Association is the representative body for physicians. So we are a volunteer-based association of physicians, and we also act as the negotiator for physician contracts within the territory. We are certainly not the regulator of physicians, and are not funded to act in that way. And that point actually brings up it brings up a concern around the resources and what's being requested of physicians and even of the NWTMA at this stage. A college of physicians would be similarly an elected body of physicians, elected by physicians, and some appointed by government, I believe, in most jurisdictions. And they would have the distinct. They would be empowered to regulate the profession and to ensure the protection of the public, but that is not the mandate of the NWTMA. And the NWTMA is certainly willing and available to provide input in venues such as this one in order to be a spokesperson on behalf of the profession, but certainly its job is very distinct from regulation. Establishing a college of our own within the Northwest Territories would be very expensive and a big drain on our resources. Even reviewing the standards that have been proposed that are unique to the Northwest Territories is a big ask of physicians in the territory who are already doing full-time work. Anything where we're commenting on these type of regulations is off the side of our desk. It's something that we're doing when we have time, and often are asking other experts nationally or asking legal input. But it's difficult to have meaningful input on questions of regulation when that's not every physician's interest. So for a small, we have, our membership currently stands at 79 physicians in the NWTMA, which is a very small number of physicians in order to weigh in on things like the standards of practice. Also important to know is that for certain specialties, there may only be one specialist physician in any particular domain, and yet there may be standards that have unique impact on particular specialty areas. So for that reason, it would be valuable to have input of a larger body of physicians, despite the fact that there are unique aspects that have to be considered from the Northwest Territories context.
Thank you very much, Dr. Breen. Emily Johnson?
No follow-up. I think at this point we need to have some conversations with the minister and see what is and isn't possible. But thank you very much for presenting today.
Thank you very much, Emily Johnson. Are there any additional questions from members? Thank you, members. So we are in a unique position, and I thank Emily Johnson for raising that and explaining that we are kind of bound within the scope of the bill that's been presented to us within committee. And I know that there are multiple bills where we'd love to kind of go rogue and off-road, but we're definitely bound to being able to remove or amend things with the agreement of the minister who is the lead on the bill. So committee did hear from the NWT Medical Association in regards to the registry and heard what was said, and that one has been addressed. And then as far as the regulation of physicians, we are in a unique situation, and committee did call for an amendment there to, as Emily Johnson specified, to require the consultation with the NWT Medical Association in an attempt to give a voice to physicians within the legislation. But as Emily Johnson said, we definitely need to kind of figure out what the way forward is. But the question that I have is, has the NWT Medical Association spoken with the department, or do they have plans to continue the work that they're doing in regards to figuring out how to create that arm's length regulation of physicians in the territory? Thank you.
After meeting with the minister, it doesn't appear that there's clarity around how to move forward with the question of how to establish an arm's length body, other than the minister directly approving standards or codes of ethics. So I'm not sure currently where things stand going forward.
No, thank you for that, Dr. Breen, and I think that's important to committee, is being able to hear that and follow up on that one. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you so much for your time today. It was very helpful to committee to be able to hear directly from the NWT Medical Association, so we really appreciate your time. Committee, can I have a motion to move in camera, please? Thank you, Emily Nakobi, and thank you to the public who has joined us here today.